The chamber of the Galactic Council was alive with whispers, a restless tide of languages and tones that no translation matrix could soften. It was a place designed to impress: high vaulted ceilings like the ribs of a titanic beast, polished blackstone floors reflecting the glow of 1,000 holograms, and seats carved for species too alien to imagine sharing space. Yet for all its grandeur, the air tonight was heavy with fear. At the center of that fear sat a man in a crisp but plainly cut uniform, shoulders squared, expression unreadable. Captain Elias Ward was not born for politics and certainly not for spectacle. He had been a soldier first, a survivor second. His scars were hidden beneath fabric, but the way he carried himself, unflinching beneath the scrutiny of 1,000 alien eyes, revealed the truth. Elias Ward had stared death in the face often enough that another crowd's judgment didn't shake him. Human, someone hissed from a tier above, a word that carried the sting of suspicion more than insult. Others echoed it, some in voices too guttural, too insectal, too metallic for humans to mimic. The word rolled around the chamber like a warning. Chancellor Vaylor rose from his dais, robes flowing as if the chamber itself bowed before him. He was a towering figure of scaled flesh and piercing amber eyes, a male who had steered the council for nearly 2 centuries. His voice filled the chamber. "Representatives," he began, measured and deliberate, "today we confront the question of humanity. A species new to the stars, fragile of body, reckless of mind, yet unreasonably resilient. Already they have defied the odds, survived conditions that should kill them, and multiplied with dangerous speed. And now," his gaze slid like a blade toward Elias, "now they bring with them the shadow of the universe's most feared predator." A rumble spread through the chamber. Some leaned forward eagerly, others recoiled as though preparing for violence. Chains clattered. The sound drew every eye. From the tunnel behind the council floor emerged guards clad in layered armor, dragging behind them a beast that dwarfed them. Its hide shimmered like obsidian plates, its eyes burned like coals smothered yet never extinguished. Spines arched along its back, twitching as if eager to pierce the air. This was Korthar the Apex, the predator whispered of in lullabies designed to terrify children into obedience. He had hunted fleets, crushed armored battalions and turned colonies into charnel grounds. The last of his kind, captured only because the council had emptied entire armies into the attempt. The guards forced him forward, each chain tugged taut, energy shackles biting into muscle that could shear steel. Even muzzled, even wounded, he radiated power. His growl rolled through the chamber, rattling glass and courage alike. A voice whispered near Elias's ear, though not intended for him. "They will lose him. They will prove humanity's lies." Elias did not move. His gaze remained locked on the beast, not with bravado but with a soldier's cool assessment. He had seen death before. The question was whether death would recognize him this time. The guards halted. The predator's claws gouged the floor as it shifted, eyes sweeping across the tiers of assembled species. Silence thickened. Even the translators seemed to hesitate, as if sound itself dared not intrude. The council expected carnage. They expected the predator to lash out, to tear free, to prove once again that no chain could hold him. They expected the human to cower or die. Instead, the predator inhaled, nostrils flaring. His head turned, scanning the room and then stopped. His gaze found Elias. For a heartbeat, the chamber existed only between 2 sets of eyes. One human, one alien, both carved from battle. Korthar's spines lowered. His growl softened to a deep rumble, a sound of recognition. Then, impossibly, he lowered himself. The predator sank to his forelimbs, muzzle pressing close to the floor, spine arching in a posture unmistakable across every culture. Submission. The council erupted. Shouts, roars, shrieks and frequencies human ears should not bear, all colliding in disbelief and terror. Chancellor Vaylor slammed his staff, but the noise did not fade quickly. It took long minutes for order to crawl back into the chamber, minutes during which Korthar remained bowed before Elias Ward. The human did not move. His jaw clenched once as though grinding down something he did not wish to reveal. His voice, when it finally came, was steady, low, and carried farther than expected. "I didn't train him. I didn't command him." His eyes swept across the chamber, taking in the 1,000 watching species. "He chose me." The uproar began again, louder, sharper. Questions hurled like blades. What sorcery is this? What pact have the humans made? What danger do they bring? Elias remained still as the storm of voices raged. Only when Korthar raised his head slightly, eyes still locked on him with something beyond hunger, beyond instinct, something like loyalty, Did Elias allow himself a breath? The chamber's chaos did not diminish. The truth burned into every witness. The predator bowed, and the predator bowed to a man. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The uproar in the chamber did not settle so much as it fractured into jagged fragments of accusation. Dozens of alien voices layered atop each other, some shrill, some guttural, others nothing more than modulated static that still carried fury. Translators strained to keep pace, their mechanical tones overlapping in chaotic harmony. Words like abomination, conspiracy, and contamination flared again and again. At the center of it all, Elias Ward stood like a pillar of stone in a storm. He had no podium, no entourage, no protective guard. Only his uniform, and the predator crouched beside him, silent and watchful, every twitch of muscle promising violence if provoked. Korthar's spines bristled and flattened with each new wave of hostility, but he did not rise. His eyes never left Elias. Chancellor Valer's staff cracked against the dais, the sound amplified through the chamber until the chaos fell into uneasy silence. The elder's amber eyes were fixed on Elias, sharp and heavy with calculation. "This is no coincidence," he declared, his voice deliberate, carved from suspicion. "Predators do not bow. They consume. They dominate. Yet this beast kneels. Explain this deception, human, or accept the judgment of the council." Every gaze in the chamber pressed down like physical weight. Elias's throat felt dry, but his mind sifted through memory with a soldier's efficiency. He could lie, claim ignorance, deny knowing the creature. But lies were brittle things in the face of suspicion, and the truth was already clawing its way into the open. His voice, when it came, was steady. "It happened months ago on a world you call Jurkael. A recon mission gone wrong." The chamber stirred. Some recognized the name, a planet whispered as a death world, an ecosystem of blades and teeth where survival was measured in heartbeats. Few council races dared set foot there, and those who did seldom returned. Elias's eyes sharpened with memory, and the chamber blurred into the past. The stench of sulfur, the ground cracked and steaming beneath a blood-red sky. His squad was gone, cut down by storms and beasts alike, until only he remained. And in a shallow ravine, half buried beneath shattered stone, lay the beast he now faced again. Korthar had been wounded then, spines broken, one eye sealed by dried blood. He had still been a nightmare, breathing ragged yet exuding power. Elias could have ended him with a single shot. The thought had burned through his mind, pragmatic and cold. Kill the predator, complete the mission, ensure survival. But something had stopped him. Perhaps it was exhaustion, perhaps the stubborn streak that had carried him through every hopeless fight. Instead of firing, he lowered his weapon and pulled the emergency ration pack from his belt. He broke it open with shaking hands and tossed a slab of protein near the predator's snout. Korthar's eye opened then, burning even through pain. For long minutes he did nothing, as though weighing whether the human was bait or fool. Finally, with a slow, deliberate motion, he ate. Days bled together after that. Elias nursed his wounds with field dressings, set crude traps to ward off scavengers, and dragged himself through terrain that seemed to fight every step. The predator followed. At first it was little more than shadow at the edge of vision, then closer, then watching openly. When the scavengers came in packs, scaled horrors with too many jaws, Elias fought with knife and fire, his body trembling with fatigue. And when he staggered, when the last beast lunged, Korthar struck. Claws sheared through flesh, bone cracked beneath his jaws, and suddenly the predator was no longer merely following. What had grown between them was not mercy, nor companionship, but something older, harsher. A recognition. Elias refused to yield, and in that refusal Korthar found a mirror of his own nature. Predator and soldier, each tempered by hardship, bound not by chains but by respect. The memory dissolved and Elias was back in the chamber. The silence was colder now, stretched taut by disbelief. "You expect us to believe this creature follows you because you fed it?" Chancellor Valer's voice dripped with scorn. "That the deadliest predator known to our records kneels because of scraps?" Elias's gaze hardened. "I didn't feed him to tame him. I fed him because I wasn't ready to give up. He watched. He tested me. And he decided I was worth following. That's it. No control, no trick. Just choice." A ripple of unease surged through the assembly. The notion was more terrifying than any conspiracy. If predators could choose loyalty, if apex killers could decide to bow of their own accord, then the galaxy's carefully balanced hierarchies were paper waiting for flame. One delegate, skin glimmering like liquid mercury, rose from their tier. "This is dangerous beyond calculation. If one predator can submit, others might follow. Imagine fleets of war beasts bending knee to fragile humans. Their chaos will spread, their influence unchecked. Humanity must be contained. Another voice, shriller, cut across. Not contained, eradicated. Before they corrupt more of the galaxy with this infection. The chamber roared again, species divided between fear, fascination, and raw panic. Some demanded research, others demanded war. Through it all, Elias stood unmoving, though every instinct in his body urged him to reach for a weapon he no longer had. Korthar's growl rolled through the hall, low and resonant, silencing several voices at once. He leaned closer to Elias, the chain of his muzzle taut, but his eyes burned not with hunger but with defense. He was waiting, Elias realized. Waiting for his signal, his approval, his permission to tear the chamber apart. The realization tightened his chest. The Predator's loyalty was real, but it was also a blade poised above the Council's throat, whether he willed it or not. Chancellor Vaylor's amber gaze lingered on the two of them, unreadable. Then he raised his voice. This Council will deliberate. But make no mistake, humanity's future is no longer its own. The Predator's bow is a threat to us all. Until we decide, Captain Ward, you and your beast are under the Council's custody. Chains rattled again as guards encircled them, though none dared step too close. The Predator's eyes followed every motion, promising ruin if they miscalculated. Elias drew a breath, steady, unyielding. He could feel the storm gathering. This was no trial of diplomacy, no simple misunderstanding. This was the Council's fear crystallizing into something far deadlier. And he knew with soldier's certainty that fear, once sharpened, always sought blood. The chamber lights dimmed as the Council prepared to recess, voices still echoing against the high ceiling. Elias glanced at Korthar, whose gaze remained fixed on him with a loyalty born not of chains but of choice. For the first time since he had stepped into the chamber, Elias felt the weight of what was coming, not just for him but for every human who would soon bear the consequence of a Predator's bow. The silence that followed was not peace. It was the calm before the strike. The chamber did not sleep. Even as the Council declared a recess, the echo of debate lingered like smoke. Hushed conversations filled the tiers, delegates leaning into one another with glances cast toward the floor where Elias and Korthar remained under guard. The Predator crouched low, his spines rising and falling with the rhythm of restrained hostility, while Elias stood straight despite the weariness threatening to bend him. He could feel eyes on his back, hundreds of them, each gaze sharpened by fear. Chancellor Vaylor moved through the assembly with the ease of authority. His amber eyes carried the weight of calculation, his movements deliberate, his robes whispering across the polished floor. When he stopped, it was directly before Elias. The Predator growled, low and vibrating, until Elias raised a hand slightly. The growl faded, but Korthar's eyes burned hotter. You stand at the heart of something you do not understand, human, Vaylor said, his voice low but powerful enough to carry. The Council governs not only through law but through balance. Predators bow to no one. They kill, and in their terror they keep the order of the wild. Your bond has broken a law older than this chamber. And now, because of you, every world fears collapse. Elias's reply came steady, though each word scraped against the tension. I didn't ask for this. I didn't bind him. He chose. Exactly, Vaylor snapped, his composure cracking into visible anger. That is what terrifies them most. Just. If predators can choose, then the fragile may rule and the strong may serve. That is a reversal no empire will endure. The Chancellor turned sharply, his robe twisting like a banner in a storm, and ascended back to his dais. The assembly shifted uneasily. Some delegates nodded in agreement with his words, others whispered with unease, and a few, Elias noticed, watched him with something close to curiosity. The council convened again, the floor illuminated with pale blue light as speakers were granted permission to voice their arguments. A delegate with crystalline skin that refracted every beam of light rose first. This human claims to have earned loyalty through survival. If true, then humanity may wield a weapon more potent than fleets. Should predators across the galaxy recognize them as leaders, the balance of power will shatter. We must contain them now. Another voice followed, belonging to a slender avian figure whose feathers shifted with agitation. Containment is insufficient. Already the story spreads across the channels. Colonies whisper. Mercenaries question their allegiances. If predators see value in humans, what of slaves, soldiers, or even rival empires? Eradication may be the only solution. The word hung heavy in the chamber, echoed by murmurs. Eradication. Elias clenched his jaw, though outwardly he remained calm. He knew soldiers' whispers well enough. Once fear took root, it demanded a target. A third delegate, her form serpentine and eyes glinting with cold intellect, rose and hissed into the silence. Perhaps eradication is premature. Better to study. We will take this anomaly, separate predator from human. Examine the nature of their bond. Knowledge before destruction. The chamber buzzed. Some nodded sharply, others hissed in disapproval. Elias caught the glance of one smaller figure, a reptilian elder who shook his head slowly, dismay etched across his scaled features. There was no unity, only fear pulling in different directions. At last, Chancellor Vaylor raised his staff, silencing the chamber once more. You have heard the arguments. Humanity stands accused of destabilizing the natural order. To prove his claim, the human will undergo trials. If this bond is real, let us see it tested. If it is false, the predator will devour him before our eyes. The declaration struck like a hammer. Corthar's spines rose as he growled, but Elias simply drew a breath. He had expected no less. Councils rarely believed words, they trusted only spectacle. Guards approached, hesitant, their weapons angled more at the predator than at him. Corthar's growl deepened, vibrating through the air until even the guards flinched. Elias raised his voice, sharp and commanding. Stand down. The predator stilled, though his muscles remained coiled, his eyes locked on the guards with lethal promise. The chamber shifted again, unease thickening. The predator obeyed. Not the council. Not the guards. The human. Murmurs rose louder, disbelief tangled with dread. The avian delegate's feathers quivered as he hissed, "It is true. The beast listens." The chancellor's eyes narrowed, the faintest flicker of unease visible even through his control. He gestured, and a platform extended from the chamber floor. Holograms shimmered into existence, conjuring images of impossible feats, walls of flame, swarms of automated drones, simulated adversaries designed to overwhelm. Command him, Vaylor ordered. Make him obey before us all. Elias's jaw tightened. He turned toward Corthar, who watched him with patient eyes, not like a beast waiting for orders but like an equal awaiting intent. Their bond had never been one of command, only of shared survival. Elias inhaled and spoke. Do what you will, but protect me. The predator moved, fluid and sudden, tearing through the simulations with terrifying grace. Claws ripped through drones as if they were paper. Fire curled around him yet could not touch him, holographic beast shattered beneath his weight. Every motion was precise, not mindless fury but controlled devastation. His eyes flicking always back to Elias as if to ensure he was unharmed. When the trial ended, silence consumed the chamber. Predators were chaos embodied, yet this one fought with purpose, restraint, even discipline. And he did so for a human. The whispers came again, sharper this time. Too dangerous. Unnatural. He must be destroyed. But beneath the fear, a new current stirred, something quieter, something uncertain. Elias's voice broke into the silence. This isn't about control. It's about respect. You fear what you see because it doesn't fit your order. But maybe your order was broken long before I ever arrived. His words struck some like blasphemy, others like revelation. The chamber erupted into noise again, a storm of voices clashing like steel. In the shadows above, unnoticed by most, figures moved, cloaked and silent, slipping through guard patrols with practiced ease. Their eyes gleamed with intent, their weapons poised. The council debated humanity's fate, but others had already chosen. Assassination whispered its arrival, cloaked in silence and steel. Corthar's head snapped upward, nostrils flaring. His growl thundered across the chamber, silencing debate once more. Elias followed his gaze and caught the flicker of movement above the tiers. His stomach dropped. The council froze, realization dawning too late. Saboteurs had breached the chamber, carrying weapons forbidden even in war. The predator rose to his full, terrible height, chains snapping against his muscle as he roared a warning. Elias's hand went instinctively to his belt, though no weapon hung there. His body tensed with soldier's certainty. The trial was no longer spectacle. The strike had come. And the chamber was about to drown in blood. The first blast tore through the council chamber like thunder trapped in stone. A concussive shockwave ripped banners from their mounts and sent fragile-bodied delegates sprawling across polished floors. Glassy eyes of crystalline species cracked under the pressure, feathers scattered into the air, and translators sputtered into static as the air filled with smoke and sparks. Elias Ward was already moving. Instinct drove him forward even as his ears rang and his lungs burned. He had seen enough ambushes to know hesitation was death. He threw himself into the cover of a collapsed pillar, eyes scanning for the attackers. Above the tiers, shadows danced, saboteurs with cloaks that bent light, advancing with weapons no council guard could counter. Korthar roared, and the sound split the chamber like a cleaver through bone. Chains snapped taut as the predator surged forward, pulling half a dozen guards with him as though they were insects clinging to his hide. One chain snapped free, then another. Sparks flared as the final link gave way and the beast was loose. The assassins made their first move. War beasts were loosed from containment pods hurled into the chamber. Flesh shimmered as the creatures unfolded from compact stasis, jaws splitting into rows of teeth, eyes gleaming with synthetic cruelty. Their masters had bred them for one purpose: slaughter. Elias ducked as a beam of plasma seared over his head. He sprinted toward the nearest weapon dropped by a fleeing guard, scooped it up and rolled behind another shattered dais. The rifle was alien, heavy and unfamiliar, but a trigger was still a trigger. He fired, bursts of violet energy slamming into an assassin's chest and dropping the figure in a heap. Korthar hit the warbeast with all the fury of a storm. His claws tore one apart before it had even fully stabilized, obsidian hide shrugging off its desperate counterattacks. Another lunged from his flank, jaws snapping down, but Korthar twisted and drove spines through its throat. Blood hissed against the stone as the predator spun, his roar shaking the walls. And through it all, his gaze never left Elias. Every kill, every movement, was calculated around the soldier's survival. Delegates screamed, some fleeing toward exits, others frozen in terror. Council guards tried to rally, but their training crumbled in the face of engineered monsters. The chamber was chaos incarnate. An assassin dropped from the rafters, landing directly behind Elias. Elias spun, the rifle too slow, but the knife at his belt was already in motion. Steel met alien flesh cutting deep. The assassin hissed and struck back, blade flashing, but Elias twisted aside and drove his shoulder into the attacker's chest, sending both of them sprawling. The predator was there a heartbeat later, jaws snapping the assassin in half before Elias could even rise. The council watched in horror. Not at the attackers, not at the beasts, but at the sight of predator and man moving as one. A dance of blood and instinct, soldier and apex aligned. Elias staggered to his feet, blood streaking his arm from a shallow cut. He wiped it away, his expression grim. He shouted across the chamber, voice carrying even over the chaos. "They're not here to kill the predator, they're here to kill me. You want proof? There it is." But his words barely penetrated the storm. The delegates heard only the roar, saw only the carnage. The predator was no longer a prisoner. He was a weapon unleashed, and the human was at his center. One of the war beasts broke through the guards and lunged straight for Elias. He braced for impact, rifle raised, but Korthar intercepted, slamming into the beast mid-air. The two titans crashed against the floor, claw against claw, teeth against spine. Elias fired into the fray, each shot deliberate, carving holes through engineered flesh until Korthar finished it with a rending strike that split the creature's skull. The assassins faltered then. Their war beasts lay torn in heaps, their ambush collapsing under the predator's relentless fury. Two tried to retreat back into the shadows, but Elias cut them down, his rifle steady in hands that had steadied countless times before. Silence returned slowly, broken only by the crackle of dying fires and the labored breathing of survivors. The chamber reeked of blood, burnt metal and ozone. Delegates clutched one another, trembling. Guards stood in uneven lines, their weapons lowered, their eyes locked on the predator who prowled the floor beside a human soldier. Korthar's muzzle dripped with blood, his spines gleaming wet. He stood tall, chest heaving, then lowered himself to Elias's side. He did not bow this time, but the meaning was the same. His loyalty was unmistakable. His choice undeniable. Elias lowered the rifle, the weight of exhaustion pressing hard against his shoulders. He glanced up at the dais where Chancellor Vaylor stood, his robes torn, his staff cracked, his amber eyes fixed on the scene below with unreadable intensity. The Chancellor raised his voice, and though smoke and ruin dulled it, his words carried sharp and clear. "Do you see, Council? Do you see what has been unleashed? This is not loyalty, it is domination. The predator bends not to humanity but to this human. Imagine if every predator did the same. Imagine fleets of monsters at their command. Humanity is not ally. Humanity is contagion. And contagion must be purged." The words struck like another blast, heavier than any explosion. Delegates turned, their whispers fevered, their fear sharpened into resolve. Elias felt the shift in the air. The trial was over. The evidence had been given, though twisted against him. The council no longer debated whether he was dangerous. They had decided. Corther growled, sensing the change, but Elias raised a hand and steadied him. His eyes locked on Vaylor's, unflinching. You think you can control this? You can't. You fear predators because they act without mercy. But what you fear more is that one chose differently. That choice terrifies you because it means your order isn't permanent. Vaylor's gaze hardened. He raised his staff, cracked though it was, and his voice became a decree. Humanity's representative is too dangerous to live. The predator will be destroyed, the man executed. Guards, seize them both. The order thundered across the chamber, and the guards hesitated only a moment before moving. Their eyes betrayed their fear, their hands shook on their weapons, but they advanced. Corther rose to his full height, a wall of spines and muscle, his roar rattling the fractured ceiling. Elias squared his shoulders beside him, the rifle heavy but ready. He knew there was no negotiation now. No diplomacy, no trial, no appeal. Only the fight that always waited at the end of fear. The predator and the soldier stood side by side as the council closed in, their fates bound together in defiance of a galaxy that could not comprehend their bond. The chamber trembled again, but this time not from an attack. This time, it was the sound of inevitability, the strike about to fall, the decision about to be carved in blood. The first guard to step forward hesitated, his eyes darting between the Chancellor's command and the living storm that was Corther. The hesitation spread like a sickness. Boots shifted on the shattered marble, hands tightened on weapons, and yet no one wanted to be the first to provoke the beast. Elias could feel the tension like a drawn bowstring. The council chamber, once a monument of order and hierarchy, had become a cage, and inside that cage stood fear, loyalty, and betrayal, all waiting to strike. Elias lifted the rifle higher, though he knew the ammunition was nearly spent. His breathing steadied into the rhythm drilled into him during years of war. Inhale, exhale, choose your target, act. But what he faced now was not a battlefield of soldiers. It was a room of frightened politicians whose fear was being weaponized by the Chancellor. And that, Elias knew, made them far more dangerous. Corther shifted closer, his massive frame pressing into Elias's side. The predator's spines flexed, rattling with anticipation. His amber eyes swept the chamber, then returned to Elias, awaiting the silent signal to unleash carnage again. That silent understanding, so alien, so impossible to the council, burned in the air between them. Vaylor's voice cut through the paralysis. Hesitate and you doom us all. Strike them down. Now. The first guard surged forward, shouting to drown out his own terror. Elias didn't wait. He fired, the violet bolt striking the guard square in the chest. The man fell hard, his weapon clattering across the floor. That single act broke the fragile hesitation. Shouts erupted, and suddenly the chamber was alive with movement. Blasts seared the air. Corther sprang into the tide, his roar like a mountain collapsing. He swatted one guard into a pillar, tearing another apart with a snap of his jaws. Elias moved in tandem, firing, ducking, rolling. He no longer thought about the unnaturalness of their partnership. It was instinct now, a soldier and a predator fighting as though they had trained for this moment their entire lives. Delegates screamed from the upper tiers, some fleeing, others frozen, unable to reconcile what they were witnessing. The predator was no longer the council's prisoner, no longer a symbol of fear. He was a weapon wielded by a human. And worse, he was willing. Elias dropped the empty rifle and seized a fallen guard's blade, parrying a strike aimed at his throat. The clash rang out, sparks flaring as he twisted and drove the blade through his opponent's armor. Corther's shadow loomed over him, tearing down another foe, their blood painting the chamber's once pristine walls. The guards' advance began to falter. They had numbers but no unity. Fear gnawed at them, and every step forward seemed to bring only more death. They fought not only a predator and a soldier but the certainty that they were on the wrong side of something larger than themselves. And then, from the dais, Vaylor himself descended. His staff pulsed with a sickly golden light, shards of its cracked crystal glowing brighter as he channeled power through it. His voice was steady now, amplified by the chamber's remnants of technology. You are not saviors. You are heralds of chaos. And I will end you both. Elias met his gaze, the memory of too many corrupt commanders flashing in his mind. Men who wielded authority like a blade but never risked their own blood. But Vaylor was different, he was willing to stand in it. That made him more dangerous. Corther growled low, sensing the surge of energy. Elias gripped his new weapon tighter. We end this here, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The Chancellor raised the staff and golden light speared outward, slamming into the floor and ripping cracks across the chamber. Delegates scrambled as the dais shuddered, the very stones threatening to collapse. Guards stumbled, blinded by the brilliance. Elias shielded his eyes, teeth grit, and charged. Korthar was faster. He barreled toward Valor, but the Chancellor swung the staff, a barrier of light erupting between them. The Predator struck it head-on, claws screeching against the energy field, spines flaring as sparks burned his hide. He roared in fury, the sound shaking dust from the rafters, but the barrier held. Elias didn't stop. He slid low beneath the barrier's edge, rolling toward the Chancellor with blade drawn. Valor's eyes widened as Elias lunged, but he pivoted the staff, catching the strike and shoving him back with a surge of force that sent Elias skidding across the fractured floor. "Do you see?" Valor shouted to the council, though his words quivered with strain. "This is humanity's gift. Violence, domination, corruption. They infect even the apex, bending monsters to their will." Elias rose, blood trickling from a split brow. His voice was raw but unshaken. "You're wrong. You think loyalty is corruption because you've never earned it? This bond isn't about domination, it's about choice. And that choice is the one thing you'll never control." Korthar struck again, slamming his full weight into the barrier. Cracks spidered through the golden light, shards splintering outward. The Predator bellowed, his claws raking deep, until at last the barrier shattered like glass. Elias seized the moment. He surged forward, blade flashing, driving it toward the Chancellor. Valor twisted aside, the weapon grazing his robes, and retaliated with a burst of golden energy. The force slammed into Elias's chest, hurling him backward into the wreckage of a pillar. Pain flared white-hot, his breath ripped away, but he forced himself to rise, his hand tightening on the hilt. Korthar closed the distance, jaws snapping at Valor. The Chancellor swung the staff down, embedding its glowing crystal into the Predator's shoulder. Energy seared through Korthar, his roar shaking the chamber as he staggered, smoke rising from his wound. For a moment, it seemed the Predator might fall. But Elias was there, launching himself forward with the last reserves of strength. His blade struck the staff, driving it away from Korthar and snapping its cracked crystal in two. The explosion of light hurled all three backward, the chamber trembling as though the world itself had cracked. When the brilliance faded, Valor lay sprawled, his staff shattered to dust. He gasped for breath, fury etched into every line of his face. Elias stood over him, blade at his throat, chest heaving, blood streaking his uniform. Korthar loomed behind, wounded but unbroken, his spines casting monstrous shadows. The chamber fell silent. Delegates stared, guards frozen mid-step, the entire council held in the grip of a single moment. Elias spoke, his voice steady despite the blood in his mouth. "You wanted proof of what humanity is? Here it is. Not domination. Not corruption. Loyalty. Sacrifice. Choice. This Predator chose me. And I chose him. That bond is stronger than your fear." Valor's lips curled, but his defiance faltered. Elias pressed the blade tighter, then lowered it, letting the Chancellor fall back into the ruin of his own making. The choice to spare him was deliberate, heavy, and undeniable. It echoed louder than any execution could. Korthar stepped forward then, his massive form lowering. For the second time, in full view of the galaxy's leaders, the Predator bowed to the human soldier. Not out of subjugation but out of recognition. A gesture older than any council law, more powerful than any decree. The council erupted, not with weapons, not with violence, but with voices, shouts clashing in every language, confusion and awe colliding. Fear remained, but it was fractured now, cut through with something new, possibility. Elias stood tall, shoulders squared despite the weight of blood and exhaustion. He knew the fight was not over, not truly. The council would plot, schemes would weave, enemies would rise. But in this moment he had carved something indelible into the galaxy's heart. The Predator had bowed to a human soldier, and the universe would never see humanity the same way again.